Let's rank the 7 books that I read in March. Hi friends, I'm Olivia. This is AV Club where I talk about horror, lit fic, weird books, whatever I want to talk about. Welcome back. Glad you're here. First of all, I just want to say thank you for all of the kind messages. If you missed it, we unexpectedly lost our sweet boy Roland last week. So we are very deep in grief, not really ready to talk about it in any kind of way. He was the best boy ever. I'm very lucky that I got to spend 10 years with him. He was my reading buddy, always in my lap reading. Yeah, can't really talk about it too much yet, but very grateful for all of the kindness that we've received. But as you might expect, that did change my reading in March a little bit. Didn't read quite as much, especially, in the last week or so. But I do feel like I would benefit from continuing to stick with some kind of structure talking about books here. This is a place that brings me joy and comfort. So yeah, thank you for being here, and let's get into the books. So March had 7 books, which was 6 books that I finished and 1 DNF. Kind of a derailed DNF. And I guess we'll just have to count this DNF as my least favorite book of the month, which was Repetition by Vigdis Hjorth. And this was one that I got through Netgalley. It was put out by Verso Books, and there was no archive date set on Netgalley, so I didn't know that it was going to DNF it for me. But I will say that I wanted to DNF it before then, and I was really struggling with it despite it being a very short book. That I repetition was a good word. It felt very one note, one tone, and it was also complicated in reading by the fact that NetGalley changed their DRM system so that I can no longer put NetGalley books onto my Kobo unless like the publisher specifically sets it for that purpose. And Verso Books, despite being, somewhat of a leftist book publisher, only has it set so that you can only read it on Amazon owned e-reader. So hopefully they get that checked out. But in the meantime, I had to read it just like sitting on my computer with the one reader that NetGalley allows, which was not a very pleasant reading experience. I don't sit at the computer and read books on really bright blue light screens. I figured this out a little bit since that I can put on the text to speech reader and listen to Microsoft Mark read the books to me and actually get through them with the books that I've already gotten approved for. But hopefully soon, publishers will allow you to read it on things other than Amazon e-readers, because definitely a Kobo girly here. Anyway, I don't really have too much to say on this. I was not enjoying it. It is about a young girl and has a overprotective mother, and her dad is not quite as much in the picture. Like her mom is doing most of the parenting. It is about her having like a first boyfriend and wanting to have sex, but not really understanding what that is. And also, her mother is like very overbearing about everything, and just, it just wasn't doing a lot for me. It's something about um coming of age and dealing with parental anxieties as well as like self anxieties, and it felt like there was like probably something bad to be revealed. But yeah, it wasn't doing a lot for me in terms of writing style or in how it was like dealing with the topic matter. But again, yeah, this was like forced enough for me, and I'm okay with that. I will not be seeking it back out. This was really a month of arcs. My next one was Last One Out by Jane Harper. This was 3 star, so everything from here on out is either 3 star, but it does go all the way up to a 5 star, so it was not the worst reading month. But Last One Out, this is my lowest rated Jane Harper, who is an Australian mystery writer, and she has a really beautiful way of writing about the Australian landscape and writing these Australian gothic stories where it is so much about like what it means to be an Australian in a small town, why these towns fail, how society fails them, how they fail each other, a lot about Australian masculinity, and just all kinds of things. Like there's a lot of topics that she broaches on that I think are really interesting and thoughtful and well done. This one was less so of a mystery and more so of a family drama. It was very repetitive for me, but it is about this divorced, separated couple and them figuring out the mystery of why their son went missing, that he's been missing for a long time and kind of presumed dead. But them going back to this house and figuring out what happened. But this book is long and it is much about them repeating going back to the same houses over and over again in this kind of dying out town that everyone has like slowly been abandoning over the years, that it isn't offering anything to these people in this town anymore, and how that happens, about mining, about companies kind of desecrating towns and taking all of the value out of it for people who actually live there. There's a fly flying around the sunroom wildly, so if it comes into the picture, sorry, but it's just going haywire in here. So I did feel like it still delivered on that Australian gothic that I have come to expect from her, but it didn't have quite the same like hook or mystery that I wanted. And I didn't feel like the payoff really made up for how repetitive it felt in the meantime, but very grateful to have been approved for an arc of this. It was actually an ALC, so I had the audiobook. Once again, the narrators for the Jane Harper books are wonderful, wonderful. This one had, I think, a female and a male narrator, if I'm correct. But the Aaron Falk Mysteries, whoever does that voice is wonderful. So highly recommend the audiobooks if you're thinking about checking out a Jane Harper, but I would recommend something like, I did like The Dry and Force of Nature and The Lost Man, The Last Man, something about a man, and that was set in a different part of Australia. That one was good. The next one is Lucky Girl by Allie Tagle-Dokus. This one was interesting. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit more weird girl lit or a little bit more unhinged, but that's okay. It was just a different type of book, I think, than how I was reading the marketing. And this one is if you thought that Sia's high interest in Maddie Ziegler from Dance Moms was a little bit weird. It's about this very young dancer. She's a child whenever she gets on this reality show and is like kind of scouted by this like pop star who becomes infatuated with her and really over relies on her. And it is all about how messed up this system is, the system of celebrity, or how young girls get taken advantage of in media and business, and how that impacts her relationship with her family. That her older brother had wanted to be an actor and he had kind of like failed his one big shot, and so then she has some guilt over succeeding, and there's like some love lost between them for her succeeding, but then her brother starts relying on her to try to get projects made. And yeah, it is kind of like fascinating in how it explored all of these different relationships. And I do agree that it was a little bit weird how Maddie Ziegler was kind of, it felt, exploited in promotional stuff for Sia. And it doesn't say that it's about that exactly, but I think it will ring true if you also think that's a little bit weird. The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This was a lovely gothic story. I probably did like this one less than Lucky Girl. I felt like I loved the atmosphere, but it didn't really move into something that was overly memorable for me. But it was, a different look at a gothic story. I still loved the house and the ghost and the exploration of gendered violence. This is going to sound weird, but it was just a nice time. Like, it was kind of comforting in how much it went kind of the expected way. I know that I am not doing my best job of explaining these books today, but I will say I finished Memorial Days by Geraldine Brooks today, and this quote really struck a chord with me. That was something that was kind of passed down to this author in her grief. And it says, "Do your work. It might not be your best work, but it will be good work, and it will be what saves you in your grief, to just keep working, huh, Daisy?" So sorry if my memory and my cognition is not quite where it should be. We'll be just working at it until we get back to what it's supposed to be, huh? And then next, In Bloom by Liz Allan. This was unexpectedly an Australian novel, which we, love to come across. And In Bloom is a story about a group of high school girls in the early 90s, and they have a band, and they have recently been invited to go do this battle of the bands that's pretty far away. They have a music teacher who has been very supportive in trying to get them there and is supposed to take them to this battle of the bands. However, one of the girls from the group has accused the music teacher of misconduct, and the rest of the girls are having like this falling out over this because they don't understand why one of their friends would say that about him, about this guy who has been doing so much for them. And so this novel is about the girls and them writing the music, about their fandom of Nirvana, about trying to get to this competition still, about trying to figure out, who it really must have been that did the misconduct with their lost friend, and how this impacts their life, about how they start struggling in school, get kicked out of school. There's other unraveling that comes from there. And I will say, like, it's hard to kind of talk about this book without spoiling it, but it doesn't mishandle the gravity of the kind of conversations that it's been talking about. I will say, like, I felt like it wrapped up a little bit too neatly. And I honestly, it probably said it was taking place in the early 90s at the beginning of this, but it didn't really click with me until, it was the like 1994 and they're big Nirvana fans, so no spoilers, but you can kind of figure out what happens and and why that is very upsetting to them. Um and then I was like, oh, this is in 1994. It felt like present day, honestly. Like, I guess they were walking around to each other's houses and not getting to like text and call, but honestly, I didn't even really notice. So probably could have been a little bit more thematically rich of a kind of historical novel, but maybe that's on me. Maybe that's my bad. But after reading about kind of inappropriate student teacher relationships recently with half his age or something like My Dark Vanessa, I don't think that this book necessarily stands up to be as powerful as those, but it is interesting and it's definitely a different take on it. Okay, this next one is one that I also got as an ARC, American Spirits by Anna Dorn. This one was wild. I loved this book, but I do think it was like out of pocket, as is my 5-star read for for this month as well. But American Spirits is like, hold on here. Once I get my brain fully back, I will have to do standalone reviews for this and the next book because like they were so wild. But American Spirits is almost like fan fiction about Lana Del Rey, but also if you know about Gaylor Swift, which is like this rabid fan base of Taylor Swift who think that she is gay and that everything that she does is her like secretly exposing that she's gay. And like, this woman is a billionaire. Like, it's really fascinating, and I don't want to overly make fun of them because I do feel like there is like some sort of like, mental health question there. But this one was fascinating because it is about like this girl who is the head of kind of like the Gaylor Swift for this like Lana Del Rey figure in American Spirits. Are you following? I feel like you have to be very, very online and very pop culture online to be able to follow this train of thought. But she has started the subreddit, and she is like the head of this fan base to assert that this singer and her best friend and like collaborator, this producer friend that she has, are like actually soulmates, and that every lyric is a sign that they were soulmates and is always about them, and everything links back to them. If she's wearing plaid, it's because of this. If she's says this word, it's because one time that producer wore a hat that had this logo on it. Like, it is all very convoluted, but that is the kind of level that Gaylor Swift fans are up to. And then this girl lucks into somehow becoming the assistant to the singer that she is obsessed with. And then she, gets to start making music. And then she falls in love with the producer best friend. And so there is like such a mess of things going on in here. But I will say the singer is like Lana Del Rey. Like, if you were on Tumblr in the early Lana Del Rey years, like, you will know what things are like an exact reference to. And I don't know, usually that would really, really bug me whenever I know that something real has just been mined for fiction. um But it is such a fascinating time period and to be like treated with respect that I don't feel like I've seen Tumblr era posting in a book to this degree or specific pop culture subreddits. Like, this is all very fascinating stuff to me, and it's stuff that I often find myself down the rabbit hole of. So I loved it, was exhilarating reading it in a book. But yeah, I feel like the singer could have been developed to be a little bit someone other than Lana Del Rey. Like, it was like this character in the book was obsessed with like older guys and biker guys, and like there were so many references to like very specific things in Lana Del Rey's career. I thought that it was out of pocket. I thought the ending was out of pocket. Crazy ending. uh Almost disrespectful, but disrespectful enough that like I feel like it went full circle, and I'm like, sure, whatever. But this book is a hoot. I think if you love Lana Del Rey and like pop singers and like that whole like sphere of rumor mill, etc., that I think you would really enjoy this book. I found it absolutely fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And like I said before, this arc and the next book, which was an arc, I had read to me by Microsoft Mark on the Thorium app, because Netgalley doesn't, have it on Kobo anymore, so I couldn't read it with my eyeballs. And I thought that it just lifted the experience. I loved having it read to me in such like a monotone voice. And honestly, I thought it was closer to the experience of reading it with my eyeballs than like whenever you have like an audiobook narrator and sometimes you get lost in their intonation or how they are portraying things. I felt like Microsoft Mark really had my back in this book, and I just had a great time. I do recommend it. I really recommend it. But my best book of March was, gosh, and I really was going to do a standalone book review for this last week, but that was just impossible to do. And I still feel like this book is so funny, crazy, wild that I'm still like not quite in the headspace to fully talk about it. But I thought it was absolute wild perfection, and that was A Good Person by Kirsten King. This book was the funniest book that I have ever read. Again, Microsoft Mark reading this to me, and I laughed out loud so many times. And I never laugh out loud reading, really. Like maybe once or twice in the very funniest books I've read before this, but I was like laughing out loud like every couple of pages. Like it was just so wild. And yeah, kind of like exactly aimed at me, like my age demographic, my experiences in the world, as far as like online culture, millennial white female culture, and the types of people that the types of kind of like Seinfeld for that type of person, like the worst person that that is like only slightly adjacent to yourself. Like I'm not this person, but like I see that they are adjacent to me in culture type of person. But it is about this unhinged woman in this situationship, and she thinks that like it's finally about to be like made real into a real relationship when he unexpectedly dies, and she is like left reeling. And then she finds out that this person who is just about to be her boyfriend actually has had a long-term girlfriend, and that he was cheating on her. And then she becomes obsessed with this woman, and she is like doing very out of pocket things to become close to this woman. And then that woman goes viral for writing a story about how she has found out about our main character, and it becomes all blown up and like everyone knows who she is. And yeah, this is just like the wildest book. I had a great time. It goes places that you would not expect. Stuff was said that were completely novel sentences that have never been said by anyone ever. And that is like the level of flavor that I just like crave in a book, and that I especially crave in like weird girl books or unhinged women books. Like, you need to be saying stuff that no one has ever thought to say together before. It needs to be so out of pocket that you are like gagged. And thankfully this did for me. Again, like my brain is like not fully there. My memory is not fully there at the moment. So hopefully I can this week like start to pull memories back together of like what I wanted to say about this book last week. But what I will say is like this book is out now. It came out on the 31st of March, and I highly recommend it if you like those types of books at all. Like if you don't like an unhinged woman and you think like reading from like a messed up white woman's point of view is like not a good time ever, like you know yourself, you know if like there's a possibility that, of you liking it or not, I think. But I found it hilarious and shocking, and those are things that are hard to come by in books, I think. So yeah, I think this was her debut too, which is insane. This is like the funniest 5 star for me to give. Like usually a 5 star book for me is like it somehow like spoke to my soul in a way, but whenever I got to the end of this, I was like, this was the funniest book I've ever read. Like, how could I not give it 5 stars, even though it's not like it illuminated like some deep part of my soul to me or anything? But like, if it is the ultimate in some sort of aspect, let's give it 5 stars. As far as reading goals in March, not the greatest. 0 physical books, 0 nonfiction, 0 untrackable reading, 0 big books, but 1 Australian book. So all is not lost. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me today. Thank you all for your kindness and, kindness in regards to Roland, kindness in regards to supporting me and my channel. I love talking about books. I know this has not been my best time talking about books ever, but, we will just keep chugging away, because that's all you can do. As much as I want to be a child about this and really just like dig deep into my grief and never come out of it, that's really not an option, unfortunately. So here we are. But thank you so much. I will be back to talk about books again very soon. Until next time, bye.